I've always believed that summer has its own kind of silence. The kind that hums through the air when the neighborhood is too quiet, when the ice in your drink clinks louder than it should, and when someone says your name in a way that makes you stop breathing for half a second. That's how Josh said my name that afternoon, leaning over the hedge between our yards like he had something casual on his mind, but his eyes gave it weight. "Hey," he said, thumb hooked into the waistband of his gym shorts. "You free? Pool sounds good today." It was nothing out of the ordinary. We've been neighbors since he moved in 6 months ago. Just a couple of doors down, rental half-painted shutters, and a pickup truck parked out front that hadn't been washed since spring. He's the kind of guy who keeps his shirt off more often than on, who waves to mail carriers and mows his lawn shirtless like he's doing it for someone watching. I wasn't supposed to be watching. My name's Ryan, 26, freelance graphic designer. I keep to myself. Mostly, I like quiet mornings, black coffee, and playlists with more acoustic guitar than bass. Josh is the opposite. A former high school athlete who never quite left that world behind. Loud friends, easy charm, and a body that still looked sculpted from those days. He's also, as far as I've always assumed, straight. But lately, things have felt blurry. It started with little things. Him calling me like we've known each other longer than we have. Tossing me beers on Friday nights and asking me to hang even when his actual friends weren't around. One night, I caught him staring at my sketchpad, the one I usually keep hidden, and he didn't laugh or ask weird questions. He just said, "Damn man, you're talented," like he meant it. There was something about that, the softness in his voice that stuck with me. And now, standing in his front yard with a towel slung over his shoulder and that stupid sideways grin, I felt it again. The shift. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded, trying not to look too eager. "Sure," I said, pretending I hadn't already shaved that morning, just in case I saw him today. We drove to the community pool in his truck, windows down, old rock songs playing low. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. I stared out the window like I wasn't cataloging every time his thigh brushed mine on the bench seat. The pool was mostly empty. Just 2 kids splashing in the deep end and a lifeguard with sunglasses too big for his face. Josh pulled his shirt over his head in one fluid motion, revealing that same casually ripped torso I've seen too many times across our lawns. But it hit different here, up close, with no hedge between us. He caught me staring. "Dude," he laughed, tossing his shirt onto a lounge chair, "you're not gonna tan in that hoodie?" I peeled it off slowly, feeling suddenly exposed. Not because of my body. I was fine with that, but because being near him like this made everything in me feel tight and unspoken. We swam, we raced laps, we dunked each other like kids, but there were moments, small ones, that changed. The rhythm, his hand brushing the small of my back when I climbed the ladder, the way he wiped water from my cheek, casually, like he had a right to touch me, the way his eyes lingered, just a second too long before looking away. It was nothing, it was everything. And when we got out and sat side by side on the hot concrete, drying in the sun, he leaned back on his hands and said, "You ever notice how quiet it gets after swimming?" I looked at him. His lips were parted just slightly, his chest rising and falling slow, and I realized maybe summer wasn't the only thing humming. Maybe I was changing too. Josh and I weren't instant friends, not in the way people always say, like it just clicked. It was more like gravity. Quiet at first, gradual, but undeniably pulling. It started when he asked to borrow my ladder one weekend. I was sketching on the porch when he called out across the lawn, shirtless again, naturally waving like a guy who never met a stranger. I handed him the ladder. He fixed his gutter, and before I could retreat, he said, "You want to grab a beer?" I hate drinking alone. Makes me feel like a country song. So I did. And then I did again the next Friday, and again the one after that. It became a routine. Backyard beers. Helping him move furniture. Late-night grocery runs when he'd realize he forgot milk or eggs and didn't want to go alone. Once he showed up outside my place at 11 p.m. holding a pizza box and said, "You strike me as the kind of guy who'd eat pineapple on pizza and still think you're edgy." He wasn't wrong. He'd make fun of my music. I'd make fun of his truck. He started calling me Art Boy, and I started calling him Jim Bro. Stupid names. But when he said mine, just Ryan, it sounded different. Like he meant it. There were things he didn't talk about though, like why he lived alone, or why he never mentioned his family. Once, I asked why he never dated anyone in the neighborhood, and he just shrugged. Too messy people talk. Sometimes, I wondered if there was more to that answer. That day at the pool, after we got back, he offered to grill, said it was a tragedy I'd never had his secret spice rub. I ended up in his backyard, still damp from the pool, wearing one of his old college shirts he tossed my way. It hung loose on me, smelled like his deodorant, something sharp and masculine that I didn't know how to name, while he flipped burgers. I sat on the edge of the patio, legs outstretched, sketchpad balanced on my knees. I started doodling, not him. Not directly, but something about his posture made its way into the shape of the shoulders, the curve of the spine. "You ever draw me?" he asked out of nowhere, turning the spatula like a conductor's baton. I almost choked on my iced tea. "What? You heard me. You've drawn like 10 trees and 3 benches since I met you. Ever drawn me?" I didn't look up. Not ... exactly, he smirked. That a yes? That's a mind your business. He tossed a burger onto a plate and brought it over. You're weird, man. You invited me, remember? He handed me the plate, sat down beside me, knees brushing mine, and said, quieter this time. Yeah, I remember. Something passed between us. No punchline, no mocking tone. Just ... silence. And I felt it in my chest. That aching awareness of being seen. Later that week, he asked if I wanted to join him on a Saturday trip out to this spot he knew. A natural, spring an hour out. Good for clearing your head, he said. No service, no traffic. Just water and trees. I said yes, obviously. We left early, with the windows down and the sky still gray with sleep. His truck was messier than usual, a spare hoodie in the back seat, a gym bag half-sipped, and a cooler that threatened to spill. But it felt like him, all rough edges and warmth. An hour in, the road forked, and his phone signal dropped. I think it's this way, he muttered, squinting at the map on the dash. WASN single quotes T. We got lost. The path ended in gravel and brush, and the truck shuddered to a halt. He laughed, brushing his hand through his hair. Guess we're winging it. I didn't mind. We ended up hiking the last half-mile. Trees arched overhead, sunlight breaking through in spots like stained glass. When we reached the spring, it was empty clear water, soft moss, the kind of quiet you feel in your ribs. We kicked off our shoes and waded in. He splashed me. I retaliated. We chased each other like kids. At one point he caught me from behind, arms wrapping around my waist. Briefly before he let go too quickly, like he realized something mid-grab. I felt it, the press of his chest, the warmth of his breath, the sudden awkward space between us afterward. We sat side by side again, this time on a mossy rock. His knee rested against mine. He didn't move it. You ever think about stuff like this? He asked, eyes fixed on the water. Stuff like what? He shrugged. Being here with someone, like not just as friends. I looked at him, but he didn't meet my eyes. I didn't answer. I couldn't yet. Instead, I watched a dragonfly land on the surface of the water and thought, yes, all the time. By the time we realized the truck battery was dead, the sun was already dipping low behind the tree line. Josh slammed the driver's door shut and rubbed the back of his neck like he was trying to press the irritation out through his skin. I left the cooler plugged in, he muttered. Didn't think we'd be here long enough for it to kill the battery. I stood a few feet away, arms crossed, trying to stay calm. The spring behind us glistened gold, peaceful as ever, completely unaware that we were now stranded miles from any town, with zero signal and only a half-full water bottle between us. Josh turned to me with an apologetic shrug. I'm an idiot. You're not, I said. A little too fast. It happens. He looked at me, and something passed through his eyes. Maybe frustration, maybe guilt, or maybe something else I couldn't name yet. Well, he said, hands on hips, guess we're staying here for a bit. A bit? I echoed. You mean ... overnight. Josh scratched his jaw. Unless you've got a secret tow truck in your backpack. Yeah. A quiet settled between us, heavy and strange. The kind that makes you overly aware of everything. The sound of insects buzzing, the rustle of leaves, the steady thud of your own heartbeat. I swallowed and looked at him. I've got a blanket in the truck bed, he offered. We can at least stay warm, he said. We like it. Was obvious, like we were a unit. And just like that, the space between us shifted. We set up camp as best we could, using the blanket, his spare hoodie, and a couple of towels as makeshift pillows. The truck bed was surprisingly clean, but narrow. By the time we both lay down, there was no such thing as personal space. His shoulder pressed against mine, our legs tangled once, then again. Before we awkwardly adjusted, every breath felt measured, every inch of skin hypersensitive. You good? He asked in the dark, voice low. Yeah, I lied, because the truth was, I was drowning. Not in panic, but in everything I wasn't saying. My heart pounded against my ribs, like it was trying to get out. He was so close I could smell the chlorine still faintly on his skin, mixed with his deodorant and whatever warmth was uniquely his. We lay there in silence for a while, staring up at the trees. He shifted, one arm folding behind his head, the other resting near my side. When his fingers brushed the back of my hand, just barely, he didn't move them away. I froze. My thoughts spiraled. Was it intentional? Was it nothing? Was I reading too much into everything like I always did? But then he spoke. Quiet, careful, Jano, he said. This isn't exactly how I pictured today going. How did you picture it? A pause? Not stuck in the middle of nowhere with my neighbor. I laughed, but it came out shaky. Yeah, total nightmare. He smiled in the dark. You think I'm kidding? I turned toward him slightly. My shoulder brushed his chest. He didn't pull back. Are you? Josh didn't answer right away. His voice dropped. Softer now. No, I'm glad it's you. Something in me buckled. I looked at him, barely able to make out his features in the fading light, and I wondered if he could hear the chaos behind my silence. I wanted to say something, to reach for him, to confess everything that had built up over months. But the words lodged in my throat like they were afraid. Instead, I whispered, me too. That was when he turned just enough for our faces to be inches apart. I could feel his breath on my lips, the warmth of it, the closeness. And for a second, I swore he was going to kiss me, but he didn't. He just looked at me, eyes flicking. Down, then back up, and then he lay flat again. I exhaled slowly. We didn't sleep much. Every time he shifted, I awoke. Every time I rolled over, I found myself closer. At one point, his hand rested on my hip. Just a touch. Just enough to undo me. By morning, the sun pierced through the trees, and the temperature climbed. We sat up, sore and quiet. Neither of us spoke about the night. He climbed out of the truck and stretched, shirt riding up slightly to reveal a sliver of skin. I looked away too late. Hey, he said, tossing me an energy bar. Let's walk to that ranger station we passed. Might be someone there who can help. Yeah, okay. We packed up in silence, but something had shifted. There was an ease to the way he walked beside me, like something unspoken had finally settled between us. Halfway through the trail, he brushed my arm casually, like a joke, but his fingers lingered, cold. He asked, smirking. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because whatever happened, next, we were already different, we just hadn't said it out loud yet. A week passed. We didn't talk about what happened that night in the truck bed. Not when we finally got help from the ranger. Not during the quiet ride home. Not when he dropped me off and said, later, man, like nothing had shifted. When everything had, I replayed it endlessly. His hand on my hip, the closeness, that almost kissed, the way his breath caught when I looked at him, but then silence. We returned to our routines, but nothing felt normal. When I mowed my lawn, caught him glancing over from his porch, and he'd quickly look away. When I passed him in the driveway, he'd smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't know if I should bring it up. I didn't know if he even wanted to. Then Thursday came. He texted, "Wanna swim?" 7 p.m., just us. I stared at the screen, for too long before replying. Sure. The sun was sinking low by the time I got there. The pool was nearly empty. A few teenagers laughing in the shallow end. A couple wrapped in each other near the far wall. The air was warm, but something about the water made me shiver as I stepped in. Dotch was already there, floating on his back, eyes closed. He looked peaceful but guarded, like someone pretending they weren't waiting for something. He opened one eye as I waded in. You're late? I'm literally 2 minutes early, he grinned. Still late? I splashed him. He splashed back. For a while, it was just that. Familiar rhythms, old games, borrowed comfort. But under the surface, the silence pressed in, like pressure from deep water. When the sky turned lavender, we climbed out and sat at the edge, feet dangling in the water. Josh was quiet, fidgeting. I finally asked, so, are we pretending that night didn't happen? He glanced at me. What night? I gave a tight smile, right? He rubbed his hands over his face. I didn't mean it like that. I just, I don't know where to start. I turned toward him. Try the middle? He let out a shaky laugh. Okay, middle-is. I've been confused, for a while, about things you. My throat tightened. Yeah, he nodded. You're easy to talk to. You listen. You look at me like I'm not just some dumb jock with a nice lawn. You're not? See? He smiled. You say stuff like that, and it messes with my head. A beat of silence passed. He continued. I used to think I was straight. I still say that sometimes. It's easier. It makes sense to people. But lately, He looked down. Lately, I don't know if I even care what label fits. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I was afraid that anything would break the fragile honesty hanging between us. Josh looked up. That night in the truck, I almost kissed you. I swallowed hard. I know. He leaned in, elbows on his knees. And I didn't, because I was scared. Of what it meant? Of ruining things. I nodded, barely whispering. Me too. His voice dropped. But I think I've already ruined it by pretending it wasn't real. Now it was my turn. My chest ached, but I took a breath. You didn't ruin anything? I said. I've been in my head for months trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Every time you touched me. Every time you said my name a certain way. Every time you looked at me like you were trying not to. He blinked, eyes glossy. I wasn't trying not to. I was trying too hard. I smiled, the edges trembling. Yeah, me too. The pool lights flicked on beneath the water, casting soft blue ripples across his face. The air felt thick, like we were underwater again, floating without moving. Josh shifted closer. His knee touched mine. This time, he didn't pull away. What do we do now? He asked. I gave him the smallest nod. We stopped pretending. He hesitated just a second, then reached out. His fingers brushed mine, then curled around them slowly, like he was memorizing every inch. It was the first time he touched me without turning it into a joke, without pulling back like he'd touched fire. My breath caught. I don't know how to do this, he whispered, but I want to. And before I could answer, he leaned in, so close our foreheads touched. His lips hovered near mine, but he didn't rush it. He waited, eyes flicking between mine like he needed permission. So I gave it. I leaned the rest of the way. Our lips met soft at first. Hesitant, more question than answer. But then he pressed in, and I felt it not just in the kiss, but in the way his hand cupped my jaw like he needed the contact. Like he'd waited too long and didn't know how to stop now. When we finally pulled back, he rested his head on my shoulder. We stayed like that for a long time, feet still in the water, hands linked. No one said anything. We didn't need to. We stayed by the pool long after the kiss, legs still dangling in the water, his head resting lightly against my shoulder. Like moving would break whatever spell we'd fallen under. I wasn't used to this version of Josh. Quiet, still, vulnerable. I'd seen the loud laughter, the teasing, the half-naked confidence across the lawn. But this was something else. And selfishly, I liked that I was the one he shared it with. So, he finally said, voice low against my collarbone, that just happened? Pretty sure it did. I didn't mess it up. You mean by kissing me? No, I said, then added, not unless you're planning on taking it back. He pulled away just enough to meet my eyes, a half-grin curling the corner of his mouth. Not a chance. We both laughed quietly, nervously, like the air between us had changed, but neither of us quite knew how to breathe it yet. Josh stood, stretched, and held out a hand. Come on, where are we going? Somewhere. Less chlorine scented. We walked back to his place. Still damp, still wearing yesterday's tension turned into something new. Inside he tossed me a hoodie and a pair of shorts from his drawer. They're gonna be big on you. Your ego or your clothes? He grinned. Both. I changed in the bathroom, heart still racing, face warm. When I came out, he was sitting, cross-legged on the couch, arms resting on his knees, like he was waiting for something but didn't want to admit it. I sat beside him. It was quiet again, not awkward, just full. Like both of us had things to say but didn't want to break the comfort of just being here. Josh leaned his head back against the couch. You ever been with a guy before? I shook my head. Not really. You? He gave a breathy laugh. Does kissing you count? I smiled. Absolutely. A beat. Then his voice softened. I've thought about it before. Not just you, I mean guys, but it never felt real or safe. Does it feel safe now? He looked at me for a long time. With you? Yeah. I didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty, so I reached out and laced our fingers together again. He squeezed my hand gently. You're braver than you think. You know? I said. He gave a small skeptical scoff. I spent 6 days ignoring you after the most emotionally confusing night of my life. And then you kissed me. Yeah, he said, looking at me with that rare seriousness, and I'd do it again. So I leaned in, slow and certain, and kissed him, this time with more confidence. With more yes behind it. It wasn't desperate. It was warm, familiar, like we'd finally stepped into the space we'd been circling for months. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. So, what now? He asked. I let out a breath, then said, we figure it out, slowly, honestly, together. He smiled. You always sound like a therapist. You always sound like you're avoiding the question. He laughed and nudged me with, Hasni all right, art boy, together. We talked long into the night, about stupid stuff, about fears, about whether the neighbors had any clue. He joked that if anyone found out, he'd blame it on me corrupting his innocent straight man heart. I threw a pillow at him. He caught it and said, but for real, this is, I want it. My chest tightened in the best way. Me too. We didn't sleep together that night, not in that way, but we did fall asleep on the couch, tangled up in each other, his arm around my waist, my head against his chest, breathing in sync. And when I awoke in the early hours of morning, just before light cracked the sky, he was still there, still holding me. It's strange how quickly something new can start to feel familiar. By the following weekend, our routines had changed, not dramatically, not with grand announcements or labeled milestones, just ... shifted. Josh stopped calling me bro, and started calling me Ree again, only now, his voice had this softness when he said it. He didn't sit across from me anymore when we watched movies. He sat next to me, legs grazing mine, arms casually draped behind me. Nothing dramatic, just different. Intimate. Real. That Sunday, he invited me to a barbecue at his cousin's place. No pressure, he'd said, but I kinda want you there. You don't have to ... explain anything, just be there. I almost said no. I wasn't scared of being seen with him, not anymore. But something about stepping into his world like that felt weighty, significant, like we weren't just figuring things out in the privacy of our homes or truck beds or swimming pools, like we were moving forward. But I said yes. We took his truck, windows down, music low. I watched him drum the steering wheel, glancing at me now and then like he was still getting used to this, too. You good? He asked, as we pulled onto the main road. Yeah, you sure? I smiled. Yeah, Josh, I'm sure. He reached over and took my hand, just for a second, just enough. The barbecue was ... fine, normal. His cousin grilled hot dogs. Some guy had a cornhole set up. A few neighbors I recognized waved and smiled. No one batted an eye. No one cared. But Josh did. I caught him watching me while I talked to one of the guys about art school. His eyes soft, proud, almost protective. Later, when we sat on the back deck and shared a drink, he nudged my shoulder and said, You're kind of amazing. You know that? Tell me something I don't know. He laughed, leaned in, and whispered, I'm glad you never looked away. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something settle inside me. Like this wasn't a phase. Like this wasn't something we'd undo with a mistake or a bad day. This was something we were building. That night, back at his place, he rummaged through his hall closet and came back with a small beat-up duffel bag. Tossed it on the floor between us. What's that? I asked. Your stuff, I figured. I mean, you've been sleeping over a lot. Thought maybe you'd want a drawer or something. I blinked. A drawer. Yeah. He rubbed the back of his neck. You don't have to use it. Just ... Felt like the right thing. I smiled, stepped closer, and wrapped my arms around his waist. You want me to leave a toothbrush too? Hell yeah, I do. He kissed the top of my head, and we just stood there swaying slightly. No music, no words. Just his arms around me, warm and steady. Later, when we climbed into bed, he reached out, slid his fingers between mine, and gave the softest squeeze. Hey, he murmured, just before sleep. Yeah, this ... us. I want it to last. I turned to face him in the dark, our foreheads almost touching. It will, I said, and I believed it. Not because everything would be easy, not because we had all the answers, but because, in a world full of things that felt temporary, what we had already survived being unnamed. Now that it had a name, now that we had said it, it could grow. It could stay.